I'm just kidding. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana Yamunatira Manachari Yamunatira Manachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sorry, intermission. I have a little cold. Hare Krishna. Okay. All right. On this 14th day of May, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text number 38, on page 174. Okay. Dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrato garbhas tatate nedamavritam dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrato garbhas tatate nedamavritam dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrato garbhas tatate nedamavritam dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrito garbhas tatate nedamavritam. I'm going to give it a go. Dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrito garbhas tatate nedam avritam. Go ahead, Chad. Dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrito garbhas tatate nedam avritam. Go ahead. Dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrito garbhas tatate nedam avritam. Dume navriyate vanir yatadarsho malena cha yatobe navrito garbhas tatate nedam avritam. Anyone online? Word by words. Dumena, by smoke. Avriyate is covered. Vachnihi, fire. Yata, just as. Adarshaha, mirror. Malena, by dust. Cha, also. Yata, just as. Ulbena, by the womb. Avritaha is covered. Garbhaha, the embryo or fetus. Tata, so. Tena, by that lust. By that lust. Idam, this. Avritam is covered. Idam, this refers to the soul in this case. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Purport. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little bit perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this analogy of covering, it's very apt, because in ordinary consciousness, if none of us had even heard of Krishna, we're just living ordinary life like billions of people out there, the spark is still there. The Krishna consciousness is always there. We say Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, the eternal perfection of love of God. It is always there within the heart of the living being. But when there's so much covering, which is the lust is the covering, the material desire. Material desire is why we're here. Where did we get the idea? From Krishna in the spiritual world. He's the supreme enjoyer, and we were engaged at one point in helping him to fulfill his desires and thereby enjoying spiritual pleasure. But somehow or other, we got the idea that we could try to imitate Krishna. So that means we have to be put in this place. There's no home for rebels up there in the spiritual world. We have to be here. Everyone is there harmoniously serving Krishna. So what is this place? It's a Prabhupada's famous phrase, perverted reflection, distorted reflection of the spiritual world, very aptly and strikingly described at the beginning of the 15th chapter, the upside-down banyan tree. I don't know if you've ever seen those banyan trees. They can grow practically into a forest of their own. You know, from India. I remember we used to go to Balboa Park. I don't know if that tree is still there, but there was quite a big banyan tree. We'd chant underneath it, you know, and everything. So anyway, banyan tree, it's a big, you know, if you see like a huge banyan tree, it's a big entanglement. You know, there's all these branches that come down, you know, and they're like roots anyway, and it's just like a forest in and of itself. So that's the very deep entanglement in the material world due to material desire, lust. And if so that's the fetus in the womb, completely covered, you know, not much chance of getting out of it. And then Nitya Now, what could be more apt? You know, Prabhupada doesn't mention it here, but we have that beginning of the Shikshastika, Cheto Darpanam Arjunam, right? The chanting of the holy name in congregation, Sankirtan, is like polishing the mirror of the heart, polishing the mirror of the consciousness. Now, what does that mean? It means that if there's all this dust on it, malena, malam is dirt, so a darsha is the mirror, so you can't see yourself. You can't see your real nature. That's the whole point. You're completely identifying yourself with the external body. And in that ignorant situation, you're trying to fulfill the pushings of the different senses. That's where the lust comes in, is that the senses become attracted to some sense object. And when that attraction becomes very strong, that's called lust. You're impelled to act to try to fulfill that desire. And that covers your original desire to serve Krishna. You see. So there's a different, and I'm sure you could probably correlate them with the modes of nature, you see. So avartam, they're covered, and that avartam is repeated in 39, this covering. So it's in one sense, it's encouraging, because it means if we can just get rid of that covering, then our original nature will manifest. And that indeed is the essence of the whole process of Krishna consciousness. When you're chanting Hare Krishna, you know, you're relishing the holy name, chanting and hearing, chanting and hearing. You're not thinking, okay, let me uncover a little more with the chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, you're just chanting. You're just glorifying the Lord. You may see the Lord, it may be in Artik, or it may be outside, you know. And the Harinam is even more potent, I think, than the chanting inside. You don't see the deity of Krishna, but you see Krishna in all the souls. And when someone responds, you know, I'll be honest, I hadn't been on Harinam in a long time. And then last Sunday we went out for a while on the beach, you know. And it was so nice to see people, you know, dancing in their own way, you know. They're dressed in their bathing suits and everything, you know, so it doesn't matter. But they see, well, here's something, you know, we haven't seen before, because we don't. And it's very enlivening, that interaction with the conditioned souls. And indeed, you know, I can recall when I first participated in the Harinam, you know, or first saw devotees chanting. It was, it may have been, I mean, chanting like that in a large group with very nice musicians playing and everything very together, was on television. You know, I had my own job, I had my own apartment, and I was working in a hospital, you know, responsible like that. And then at a certain point, but in my little apartment, I had no TV or anything like that. You know, I was doing yoga, and I was making juices, you know, I was doing all this stuff. I didn't even know one living there but me. So I said, okay, you know, let me watch a little TV. So I went over to my parents' place. It was just a few blocks away. And I turned on the TV, and because there was this show we used to watch, David Susskind. It was they would have guests on there, you know, and I was into. So I turned on there's the Hare Krishnas. he had his, but not only from the New York temple, but they must have invited others, because there was Bhagavad Dasa. He was very prominent in Detroit. I don't know if he went all the way to New York to be in the show. It's possible. Anyway, it was just all these devotees who are legendary now, and they were all, I don't know, in their prime, you know, still in their early 20s. And there was Yogeshwar, who later took charge of Bala books. You may not have heard of Bala books. These were books that were Krishna conscious books that were put together specifically for children. Bala means a child, you know, to aggregate the Gurukul and stuff like that. And I worked with him for a year or so on Back to Godhead. We're old friends. And there were so many others who I later came to know. And here they were in their early 20s incarnations, you know. Now I know them 50, 60. But you know, David Susskind was asking, what does your name mean? You know, they would explain it. And, you know, the ladies were very articulate. They knew the philosophy like anything, you know, also, and the men. So then they explained, yeah, we chant Hare Krishna. Well, can you show me an example? And they started chanting for a good 10 minutes, you know. They stood up and they were chanting. And it was just so attractive to see. They were all very blissful. And one of the reasons was they were doing a lot of Harinam, because I later joined that temple, and it was like 3 hours minimum a day, you know. So, and it's not like you're thinking, okay, now I'm going to cleanse this mirror of my heart, you know, let me Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I mean, that thought may go on there, but that's not what you're thinking as you're doing it. You're thinking of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. So that's the great gift of this age. I mean, this was, of course, spoken 5,000 years ago, but the science is there. Here it is, Yada Darsham Alena Cha. It's the dust on the mirror of what? Of the idam. Idam is the soul. This soul is covered by various degrees of this material desire. So that covering needs to be understood and to systematically be removed. And it's a wonderful thought that we all have the perfection within us. As very explicitly said in that verse by Lord Chaitanya, Nijasita Krishna claimed sadhya kabunoi. The word sadhya has different meanings. And the basic meaning is what comes at the end of sadhana. There's sadhana and there's sadhya. Sadhana is what we're doing. A sadhana bhakti means the practice for devotional service according to rules and regulations, all this and that. And the sadhya is the end goal, which is prema. That's the goal of the whole process. So sadhana, sadhya. But sadhya also has a meaning of something that you gain that's not intrinsic to you, something that you might call artificial, you know. But in the material world, it's all artificial. Someone gains the position of a CEO somewhere, or he gains a medal for some, you know, athletic event, you know. Oh, now I'm a champion, you know. So you have this identity suddenly. Now that's very good. That's what I want, you know. Or now I'm the CEO. I'm in charge, you know. Like, so it's all illusory because you have little bits. You're borrowing little bits of Krishna's glory. You know, he's the ultimate champion of everything. You know, enjoy it. But prema is not like that. It's not something that you artificially attain and then you enjoy. It's something that you uncover that you've had all along, but you didn't know you had. It's like a big jewel you had, you know, hidden, and we didn't even know there, and someone finds it in our drawer somewhere. You know, you have this wonderful jewel. Oh, I didn't know that. You know, because that's really what that we need to be pointed in the right direction and given the process by which we can uncover it. So that's what's going on here. And here Krishna's just, you know, continuing with the analogies, how this lust is the dust of lust. You know, it's kind of an obvious rhyme. It's one of the, and it needs to be cleaned off. And the cleaning process is yoga, you know, buddhi yoga in this case, which is bhakti yoga. Okay, so we go on. All right, more covering. Avitam is covered. Avatam gyanametena jnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya dushpurena analena cha. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Purport. It is said in the Manu Smriti, that's the Manu Samhita, that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex. And thus, this material world is called Maitunya Agara, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust is the symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Now, if you really think about that, that is a profound statement. The pleasure you're getting from sense gratification is your ultimate enemy, because it plants the desire in your heart. If you have no other frame of reference, like Krishna consciousness, oh, that's pretty cool. Let me work on that, and I'll see if I can get more of that. You know, and soon. And the perfect epitome of that is drugs. You know, sex is, of course, a very powerful, inducement to enjoy. But then there's also drugs. There's also artificial enjoyment, that's completely artificial. And just whips your system up, in ways completely unnatural. And it becomes addictive. It becomes addictive. The ordinary sense gratification can also become addictive, obviously. But these powerful drugs, they change your body in such a way that it's forcing the mind really is helpless now. You're pushed in order to, and it can be cigarettes, it can be alcohol, it can be gambling, or it can be these much heavier drugs. So that's a extreme example of this. You're help. These poor people are, they're helpless before that. Doesn't matter how strong your body is. If you become addicted to one of these heavy drugs, it's just like, you need help. In order to get out of it, you need an intervention. It's a very great analogy. You need someone from outside who cares about you to take hold of you and say, you're killing your life, you're ruining your marriage, And so you're coming with me to rehab, And if someone is lucky, they'll surrender to that, and say, this friend really cares about me. And you go to rehab, and what's the rehab? Others who are trying the same thing, a guide, who is giving you some discipline, right? Far away from the drug, you know? And you're trying to strengthen your intelligence and your will so that you can go out on your own and maintain yourself clean, you know, right, isn't it? So isn't that what the sadhu sangha is? It's association. And it's learning from a higher authority the process by which you can get clean of this lust, which is, you know, it takes over your mind, and your ideas are filled with aspirations to enjoy in this way, and so you're a million miles away from your real, you know, source of enjoyment, which is Krishna consciousness. It's just the opposite. Anyabhilashita shunyam is a famous verse, you know, describing the pure bhakti and pure love of Krishna. That's the aim of devotional service, right near the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, so logically put together. What is it that we're aiming for here? And this is the verse describing it. So, annabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavratam. There's that word avratam again, just right out of the Gita. Anukulena krishnanushilanam bhakti uttama. Bhakti uttama, the pure bhakti or pure prema bhakti. So, what does he say there? Anya abhilashita shunyam, devoid of other desires. Abhilash, this word asha we sing in the morning if anyone's at Tulsi Puja. I think it's 2 times in that verse. My aspire, what is it? Namo namo tulasi Krishna prayasi namo namo Radha Krishna seva pavo e abhilashi. Right? Abhilashi means I long to serve Radha and Krishna. You know, we should cultivate that. So that's what you're praying to Tulsi for. Please give me a chance to, you know, advance and become your maidservant so that I can always see the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And the word Rashi is there. Rashi means all the wonderful details overflowing. You know, is that your mind is filled with that thought. So anyway, so asha, and asha can be for material things or it can be for spiritual. And so we want to change our aspiration, even if it's just in the mind at first. You know, in the intelligence. This is what I should want. This is what I should want. So let me do those things that can increase my desire and determination to do those things that will actually get to that goal. So the verse continues. Anyabhilashita shunyam, devoid. Shunya we know shunya from Prabhupada's pranam mantra. Devoid. Of what? And he gives examples of other desires. Right? There's categories. Jnana, karma, dhyanavritam. So the word adi is in there, which means etc. So the jnana means impersonal liberation. That's what that, you know, you just, through your mind, you know, will just control the senses and will transcend, will merge into Brahman. That's a shorthand. And karma is just ordinary fruit of activity. Adi means etc. with his whole different categories. Anavritam, uncovered, unobscured by any desire for these things. I'm performing bhakti, but I also want this, 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 and this. If I don't get it, then I'll stop my bhakti. No, that's not bhakti. You want one thing, to be free of material desires and to desire only to serve Krishna's lotus feet. That's your ardent desire. So that's what it's covered. Now here's what you don't want. Now here's what you do want. Anukulyena krishnanushilanam. Shilanam is behavior, activities that are always in the category of favorable service to Krishna. Not just thinking of Krishna, because Kamsa was also thinking of Krishna. That doesn't count. That's not favorable. Although that was much better than just forgetting Krishna. But that's not what we want. So anukulyena, favorable, krishnanushilanam. Krishnana means following Krishna, you know, as he desires. Shilanam is simply behavior. Anushilanam, anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktir uttama. This is a quick definition of ultimate bhakti, of pure devotional service. And that's what the book is all about. Here's what you learn how to move toward that by studying this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a Prabhupada modeled ISKCON after that book. It's very important. So it's directly addressing this problem that Krishna is saying, how the soul is covered by degrees of this lust and doesn't know who he is, doesn't know what's beneficial for him and her, And so he's entangled. So we need an intervention, and that's exactly what Prabhupada's coming to America was, an intervention, where he came and he's looking for no dearth, that means a lack of conditioned souls, but he's looking for those who may be a little receptive to the message so that they'll hear him and chant. You know, this is the program. It's easy, just chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You can learn the mantra in 10, 15 seconds, and then just chant. Well, that's easy enough, you know, and the attraction of the music and the attraction of the prasadam, you know, and the Swami himself was attractive, you know, it was interesting philosophy, you know, intelligence is there. So planting those seeds, those desire seeds because of that, and and you experience something in the chanting that you haven't experienced before, you know, it's because that's Krishna. So that's you know, that's all of that is you can see the echoes of that in these verses that we read. All right, any discussion of that? We can contain that. Otherwise, we'll proceed.
In your experience, have you ever seen anyone come into the practice with drug or alcohol problems and solve them here in the practice?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have. There's always, you know, and unfortunately, I've also seen devotees fall back into that, you know, because sometimes in devotional service, it's sometimes ups and downs, you know. It can be as simple as just eating too much at the Sunday feast and missing the morning program, and starting to have doubts, and you know. So I'll tell you, I was, you know, ISKCON in Brooklyn, and when I joined, was really a happening temple. There were two main temples in the movement, one in Brooklyn and one in Los Angeles, which was really happening because Prabhupada was living there. And but where I was, we had really nice musicians, and we had a lot of devotees, and we had the artists. You know, each one of them was a special devotee. Like some of these paintings, I know who painted them, and so it was very much happening. So it just didn't occur to me that someone would ever leave, you know. And I remember ending with, "Hey, where's Bob?" You know, or whatever his name was. He says, "Oh, he blooped." That is word bloop, like back into the ocean of material life, you know. And I was shocked. I said, "Oh, why would anyone ever want to leave?" You know, because somehow you become oftentimes what happens, you offend a devotee. You offend devotees, and Krishna does not like that at all. And the way that the result of that is always that you can't feel as comfortable as you did before amongst devotees. And the deities, you know, I'll never forget this scene. There was a devotee who I worked with for years. He was a very responsible devotee. He was in charge of the Back to Godhead magazine when I moved to LA from Brooklyn in '75. I was part of the press, the BBT. And I was working with the magazine, and he was the main editor, managing editor. He was a very responsible position. But then somehow or other, I'm not sure what it was, but anyway, his wife left or lived apart from him in a different apartment, you know, so there was a problem. And so then I saw him, and we were in the temple. It was a big temple. I don't know if you've ever been to the LA temple, but it's a little bigger than this, and they have beautiful deities, Radha Krishna deities. They're called Rukmini Dwarkadish, because of the opulence of the yatra they're in. And the temple was full, and I always like to get near, up and close. My eyes were always not so good in what I was seeing. And he was in front of me, and I was watching him, and he was right there with, you know, Rukmini Dwarkadish in front of us. We didn't have this, you know, this thing with the fountain. That's a special feature here, so you're right up close. And he was looking this way and that way and this way. He couldn't look at the deities. He could not look at the deities. And shortly thereafter, we didn't see him anymore. So that, you know, that's right there in the Shastra. It's very dangerous, the offending devotees, you know, either verbally or, heaven forbid, physically, you know, or some other way. Krishna will make it very difficult for you to taste the nectar of Krishna consciousness that you've been tasting. And so it's, you know, in order to succeed in chanting, you have to know the offenses and avoid them. Because it's your progressive desire and reciprocation from the holy name, and that is keeping you enlivened in progressing in Krishna consciousness. If the chanting itself becomes just a chore, then you're on thin ice. So it works both ways. Is that Krishna is always there to help us to become attracted, but if we don't follow rules and regulations, we're not careful, then we can lose our taste. And then it's difficult. Then it's just sheer will that's keeping you going. And it's difficult to maintain on that. You know what I'm saying? So because this whole thing, consciousness is very fluid, depending on chanting your rounds in the morning every day, coming to Mangalarti. That's why Prabhupada stresses so much. That regulation is a real bulwark against Maya. The class. I made up a word. Forgive me. Manta Jagvigukla. Can anyone have any idea what that means? That's the morning program. So first is Mangalarti. 2 is Tulsi Puja. Ja is Japa. Gri is greeting deities. Gu is Guru Puja. And Kla is class. So you put it all together and it's that one word, you see. I'm a very serious devotee. Oh, how is that? Manta Jagri Gukla. Anyway, I don't know if I'll ever get into the dictionary or not. But so I've been very fortunate, practically for 50 years, to be able to be in a temple or near a temple enough, and not have to stay up really late or something, so I can almost always attain morning program. And it's just like an anchor. It's very, very important. The only time I used to miss, I'll just tell you this, one of my little anecdotes from all my history. Working on Back to Godhead, because now everything is computer. It doesn't matter where it's printed. You just send the PDFs into the printer, and you can print a book, right? But back in the day, back in '79, when I was in the New York temple, you were in the New York temple, or who was saying? There was nothing going on in the evening or something? Yeah. So that was the temple I was in. Not that temple, but the previous New York temple, which is in Manhattan. This one is in Brooklyn now. Although it's now in a very gentrified place. For years it was like a slum, they're around. And so they got it for a few $100,000. Now it was worth $60 million. They were trying to, actually they were trying to buy the land so that they could put up big condos on there. Luckily, it wasn't sold. But anyway, so I was telling a story, and now it slipped my mind. I didn't tell enough of it so you could remind me. Anyway, maybe it'll come to me. All right, let's go on. We should go back to Bhagavad Gita. So, where did we do 40? I don't think we did. Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhisthana muchyate etava mohayatyesha jnanamavritta dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Okay. Report. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification. And as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next-door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter, and thus with the mind and senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted, there you go. The spirit soul becomes addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes this as true happiness. This false identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.84.13. And this verse is spoken by Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra when they all met there. You remember that? Yasyatma buddhi kunape tvidatuke swadika latradisha bhome ijyadihi yat tirtha buddhi salilena karhachid janesha bigyesha saheva gokaraha. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. Sorry, we did Omega already. So, now Krishna is analyzing. This is almost like a psychologist here. You know, how do I deal with this lust? Where can I find the lust? Okay, so the lust is like an enemy that's taken over these strategic positions. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. And you become convinced. Who isn't convinced? You know, just like the lower animals. There's no chance for them. A dog, you know, soul in a dog's body. This is who I am. You know, it just there's no question of getting to a higher state of consciousness. So it's easy for human beings to fall into that kind of animalistic consciousness. That's the whole idea. There's a famous verse from the Hitopadesh. Some of you may be, you know, just the name of the book is so nice. Hita Upadesh, instructions for your benefit, for the benefit of humanity. So this is the only verse that I've ever heard quoted from there, and I know it. So it's all about the importance of dharma in human life. You see, dharma. So it says, ahara nidra bhayamaitunancha samanyareta pasubin naranam dharma hitesho dharma hitesho tesham adhiko vishesho and dharma hitesho adhiko vishesho dharma nahina pashubi samana. So the human beings and the animals share these four basic functions: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You find of those throughout the animal kingdom, right? So what makes a human being a human being? What's so great about the human life? Dharma hitesham adhika. Adhika means the best thing. Dharma is the difference that human beings can have that differentiates from the animals. And then the last line, dharma nihina. Without dharma nihina pashubi samana. Then human life is just like animal life, polished animal life. You see. And so, what is that dharma? You remember, if you go back to the second chapter, the early part of, I think it's the 7th verse, Arjuna changed. He changed his tune. He was arguing why he didn't want to fight. And he had it on the basis of the Vedas. You know, I'll be responsible for killing all these men. The women will be unprotected. There'll be Varna Sankara, you know, degradation. I'll be responsible. I'll go to hell, and I'll help everyone else go to hell. So who needs the kingdom? Let me just go beg somewhere, you know. So he was confused. So then finally he surrenders to Krishna, because he's talking as a friend. He's arguing with Krishna as a friend. And Krishna's reciprocating on that basis. He's not giving him any transcendental instruction. He's giving him instruction that a charioteer would give to a warrior to try to buck up his courage for the battle. So, but finally, as Prabhupada says, then you're not going to get anywhere. The two friends talking, you're not going to, you know, you can talk for days, you're not going to really find, you know, because it just equals. So finally he takes the position of a disciple, shishya. It's a whole different relationship. So the karpanya dosho pahata swabhava prachamitvam dharma samudacheta yakshe yakshan nishchitam ruhitam me shishyastehim sharimam tvam papannam. That last word is very important. I surrender to you. Not that we're talking friend to friend. I surrender to you as a guru. So he says, karpa nidosha, this miserly weakness of mine has stole away my real nature. Karpa nidosha apahata swabhava. Swabhava is his nature as a kshatriya. He's trained, you know, that's who he is. But upahata, now I'm not, I can't do my function, you know. I've had all of these other considerations of my friends and relatives on the other side. So I'm away from my dharma and I don't feel right. That's what he's saying. So therefore, dharma, so karpanita bhata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samudacheta. I'm requesting you as one who has lost his dharma, whose dharma has been taken away from him by this miserly weakness. Prichami dharma samudacheta. I'm completely bewildered. Dharma hitesha no, that's Karpa nidosho pahata svabhava prichamitam dharma samudacheta yakshreyaksyan nishtitam bruhitam me. Please explain to me how I can get my shreya. Shreya is the ultimate good, very important word. Shreyas and prayas. Prayas is the immediate pleasure. You know, kids like that. You know, they don't want to go to school even until then. The parents know, no, your future, you won't have any. You know, so they drag them. You know, then they get attached to it. So yakshreyaksyan. Syan means to come about. How can my real shreya, my welfare, ultimate welfare come about? Nishtitam bruhitam me. Tell me for certain, O Lord. Bruhitam me. Shishyasteham. Now I am your shishya. Now I remember there's a wonderful, you know, explanation of this word shishya. The Sanskrit words, they're all based on a root. Just like the word dharma is based on the word dri. And that dri is also the root of the word dhari. Giridhari, holding up the hill, you see? So dharma sustains us. That is our real nature. When we lose touch with it, then we're in trouble. So he says, so the root of the word shishya is shas, which means to control. And a shishya is one who agrees to be controlled by a spiritual master. And another two words with that root is shastra and shastra. Notice the importance of those long and short vowels. Shastra is the scripture. And the scripture is we're meant to surrender to it. It said, okay, I'm going to actually follow the instructions in the Bhagavad Gita. That's called the Shastra, something you should follow. And the Shishya is one who agrees to be controlled by the spiritual master. And Shastra is a weapon. If you're not controlled by Shastra, you'll be controlled by the weapons of the material energy, you know, which will cut you down eventually. So that's the importance of Dharma. So here, Krishna speaks this verse on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And this word buddhi, you know, in this case means having the idea or the understanding that kunape tridai. Kunape means like a bag with these three dhatus, mucus, bile, and air. Okay, which one of those is the attractive element in the body? None of them. Air, I don't want to say what kind of air, you know. So that's the Ayurveda. Yeah, Ayurveda, getting those in balance, the dhatus, you know. That's it. But are we really just a bag full of these different dhatus? That's not very smart. You have the intelligence of a. There's another way of understanding gokara, which means the donkey or the jackass who carries the food for the feeding of the cow. You see, a gokara. But anyway, you know, it's not very nice. Swadi means my own. Kalatradishu, the wife, etc. You see? In other words, thinking that you're the owner and enjoyer of the household and the family, the wife and the kids and everything. That's a big entanglement. If it's material, if Krishna's not in the center, it becomes a real entanglement. And then Bhoma Ijyadi. This is one interpretation Prabhupada gives, and of course it's the correct one, but there's others. But Bhoma is land, Bhumi, and Ija means it's worshipable. You're a nationalist, right? You identify as an Indian or American, whatever it may be. That's all ignorance because it's based on the body. And then if you happen to go to a tirtha, you think your idea of a tirtha is Salilena, a place to take a bath. You go a long way. There's a river. You take a bath in the river, and you give some bhiksha to the different wallets, and then you go home. You know, but that you haven't investigated it. You know, you haven't heard anything from the wise souls who happen to live there. You go to Vrindavan, take a bath in the Yamuna. In other words, you're not really taking advantage. You're missing a chance of really taking advantage of the Dham. And so these are different ways in which one can be in animal consciousness. So the idea is the human life is the one out of 8,400,000. There's 400,000 human lives, human species. I'm not sure what that means, but the different varieties, different natures, that you can have as a human being. But the civilized human being who is especially trained within the Vedic culture is very fortunate, and you should take advantage of that. And whoever we've come from, we have that opportunity now. Take advantage of our exposure to this knowledge and this system of advancement, and not lead animalistic lives. So this is what Krishna is talking about here in Vijnani Manubha. And to engage our senses and our mind and our intelligence in Krishna consciousness. Our intelligence is being engaged now, you see, and the mind also. And then the mind, these two, this famous verse is coming up, controlling the lower self by the higher self. And it means strengthening the intelligence and the mind, getting it right, and so the senses can be properly engaged. All right, should we do one more? And we'll save the last couple of verses for next week. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshabha Patmanam pratihiyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Okay. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning, curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Purport. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specific knowledge of the self. Jnana refers to knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnana refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained thus in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.31. Jnanam padamaguhyam me yad vijnana samanvitam sadahasyam tadangam cha grahana gatitam maya. The knowledge of the self and the Supreme Self is very confidential and mysterious, but such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. Close quote. The Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So, from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So, from any stage of life, or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. And this, I think, is a perfect place to introduce that word that is very apt: sublimation. Sublimation. It's a psychological term, but it really is exactly what is being talked about here. This lust which pervades the mind, the senses, the body, and the intelligence, everything, is that love of God that's been distorted and perverted. But it can be restored to its original pristine purity by following the principles of devotional service, which, if you think about them, engage the senses, the mind, and the intelligence in the service of Krishna. The intelligence. The Prabhupada says, what's the best way to control the mind? To always be thinking of ways of spreading Krishna consciousness, of making others Krishna conscious. Because the thing is, Krishna is in there, and he's very pleased. He's most pleased when you're trying to help out someone else become Krishna conscious. He says that at the end of the Gita, those who are preaching my message. So if your mind, you're puzzling, how can I do this? How can I perfect this service so that I can help people? Then Krishna's he's going to inspire you. Just like you see the book distributors. We have our two main book distributors, and you go out also. And I've been a little bit, just a little bit. But you could, I've seen them develop. They joined, both Dvijamani and Govardhan joined during the pandemic, the early stages of the pandemic, which is 2020, I think. So it's been almost about 5 years now. And they were. I mean, Dvijamani and Govardhan, I think they were both doing yoga. They had some exposure, especially Govardhan had been coming around for some time. He would come, but he wasn't ready to join up. But that pandemic, there was what they call a silver lining to it. Those weren't the only guys who joined up. We had several people join. That was when you became too. Yeah. And I can imagine, because suddenly the very process of breathing is not a given as it usually is. We don't usually think about it, right? But suddenly the idea that, wow, death is out there, it's more intimate than is it. And so this kind of philosophy and thing becomes very interesting. Oh, really? I'm eternal? Okay, let me figure out that. So anyway, they came at that time and they became serious. And they're both wonderful devotees. And when they give class, and tell those stories of how they're interacting with the people and they're responding. You can see they're very blissful doing it. I'm blissful hearing it. And that's how Krishna consciousness is spread. And you can just imagine, Prabhupada coming to America and finally finding a receptive audience. You can hear it in the lectures. I highly recommend these early lectures from 26 2nd Avenue. Because Prabhupada he's so, you can hear the enthusiasm in his voice and the eagerness to preach, And so they have a character all their own. And there's one other thing I highly recommend. I've been listening to it. Prabhupada's dictation of the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. This was, historically, he hadn't come down to 26 2nd Avenue. He was uptown in that little office that Dr. Mishra had given him to live, He didn't have a kitchen there. He had to walk over to but so somebody gave him this big reel-to-reel tape recorder. I don't even know if they make those anymore. But and Prabhupada saw the opportunity. Oh, I can record this, and whatever happens to be, maybe that'll be left. So it's a very detailed summary of Krishna consciousness and the Bhagavad Gita. It's really a wonderful talk. You read the introduction, you'll see. And so he made that recording, and it's several hours long. You can see the length of this thing. And someone ripped him off. They broke in. Prabhupada, it's in the Lilamrita. He suspected the janitor, but he couldn't prove it. And so he lost it. He had these few things of value, but the most valuable thing was the tape recorder. So he took the tape recorder, but he didn't take the most valuable thing, which was the tape containing the introduction. And so that became the introduction. And Prabhupada was so eager to preach. He didn't know that he had not really gotten into that environment downtown. And there was some response, uptown, but it wasn't really happening, And he would go back to the office again. Oh, I went too long. Anyway, I highly recommend that. It's easily available and you can listen to it. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.